Kasama na po natin sa StreamYard ang Secretary ng Department of Migrant Workers, Attorney Abdullah Mamao. Magandang umaga po, Attorney.
Yeah, magandang umaga po sa inyo.
Magandang umaga po, Attorney. Kahapon po, nagkaroon po kami ng ugnayan kasama po si Sec Bello tungkol po dito sa memorandum order po na inyo pong ipinalabas sa pag-lift po ng ban doon po sa pagde-deploy ng OFWs po sa Saudi Arabia. Ang sabi niya po, Attorney, ito daw po ay null and void at walang visa. Ano po ang reaksyon nyo tungkol dito?
I beg to disagree with the opinion of Secretary Bilio because under the provisions of the law, the Secretary of the Department of Migrant Workers, particularly in paragraph K of the implementing rules and regulations,
Attorney?
and this is the same with the law, it provides the Secretary, referring to this particular provision of the law, at any time terminate, suspend, or impose a total ban on the deployment of migrant workers. That particular department order lifting the ban for the processing and verification of employment contracts of domestic workers in Saudi Arabia is within the purview of the law. I am exercising that particular power under the law as provided in the law creating the Department of Migrant Workers and the implementing rules and regulations that was published and became effective after the expiration of 15 days from the date of publication on April 6, 2022. So, as far as I am concerned, that department order shall remain valid and effective until now, because that is exercised by me as Secretary of this department within the purview of the law.
Opo. Okay. Well said po, Secretary. Well said. According to the law, yan po ang sabi po ninyo. Meron kayong poder ang Secretary nga po ng Migrant Workers na magsabi kung meron bang deployment ban o wala sa isang particular na lugar. Pero ang tanong po ng marami din, maging ng Secretary Bello at maging ng Senator Frank Drilon, are you now assuming the office of the Secretary considering na hindi pa ho kayo official na nagfa-function ang inyong departamento kasi yung tatlong hinihingi sa batas para ho kayo makapag-function ay kulang pa. Meron na po tayong IRR, wala pa tayong staffing pattern at wala pa kayong budget. Go ahead, sir.
We have no quarrel with that tape as far as that issue is concerned. We agree that based on the provision of that law under Section 23, the Department of Migrant Workers is not fully constituted
Yet.
until we have the budget for 2023, the implementing rules and regulations, and the staffing pattern. But there are two stages of operation of this department. This Department of Migrant Workers was created by law, and that law creating it became effective on February 3, 2022. Now, that is the view of Secretary Bilio, that this department is not fully constituted. And as I said, we had discussed that in the presence of the President, that this department is not fully constituted because we don't have the budget for 2023. But we are now in the initial operation of the law. And the provision of the law specifically provides under Section 26 that the amount needed for the initial implementation of this law shall be taken from the budget of all the agencies merged and subsumed by this department. Right now, Ted, I hope you will have the time to visit the office now of the Department of Migrant Workers. We have taken over the 6-story building of the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration. I am now performing as the secretary of this department. So,
Okay. So
if
Sec,
you can-
you
if you can
mentioned
visit us in
you
this,
mentioned you
in this
mentioned
building-
that you mentioned that you discussed this issue on the operations of your department in front of the president. When was this, sir? At sino pong kaharap nyo?
that was discussed in the presence of the president in one program that we talked to the people program of the president, in the presence of Secretary Bilyo, Secretary Midaldia, and other members of the cabinet. And also, after the groundbreaking ceremony in Las Piñas, we were invited to Malacanang,
Uh-huh.
and we had this meeting with the president and Secretary Midaldia. But unfortunately, in that meeting, Secretary Bilyo did not attend.
Okay. So, Secretary, hindi ito ang unang pagkakataon na napulaan kayo, with all due respect, sa inyo pong galaw at kilos bilang kalihim ng departamentong yan. Pati ho yung IRR na dapat nga po yung Transition Committee ang bubuo, gumawa kayo ng sarili nyo, hindi dinaan sa Transition Committee, mismo ho ang Secretary Midaldea sumulat sa inyo na ito ang dapat i-honor na IRR at ipapublish as approved by the President. Ano ho ba ang nangyari noon at bakit ho kayo ba hindi po nababahala dito po sa mga sinasabing mga pangitain na kayo daw ho mismo hindi sumusunod dito po sa nais mangyari po ng batas?
I have to explain, go back to the incidents on why I signed the IRR by myself. This was also discussed in the presence of the president and medially. What happened was, when I assumed as secretary of this department, there was this memorandum of Secretary Midaldia addressed to all the members of the committee that from the time on, I shall be leading the committee. And I had convened the meetings of the committee several times. But unfortunately, as I mentioned to the president, the members of the committee were not attending. Majority of them were not attending because according to them, they did not have the clearance of the Secretary of Foreign Affairs. They did not have the clearance of the Secretary of Labor. So I had given them the opportunity to participate in the deliberations of the committee. We had prepared the zero draft that was submitted to me, and that was done by the members at that time before my assumption as Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs.
Opo.
I was always exercising my authority and my power within the purview of the law.
Okay. Opo.
But unfortunately, the members of the committee abandoned their responsibilities,
All right.
abandoned their rights to participate in the deliberations of the committee.
Opo,
So
opo.
when the time came, if I can proceed, on April 4, I signed the implementing rules and regulations, and that was what I mentioned to the president in the presence of Midaldia.
But
Now, going back to the memorandum, as you said, about the approval of the IRR of the members of the 6 members of the committee, that memorandum is questionable because it was signed for. It was not signed by Midaldia. It was not signed by the president. And nobody outside from the office of Secretary Midaldia can make that kind of signature because a delegated authority cannot be delegated further.
all right. Sige po.
So, from this time on, there is only one IRR. And that was the IRR that I signed in accordance with law. It was published, and the 15-day period had already expired. So that is, as far as our office is concerned, is the valid implementing rules and regulations. If the members of the committee are not participating
Opo.
in our meetings, that is not.
Okay, sige
That
po.
is not
Opo.
my
Attorney,
decision.
attorney, this is becoming more confusing to us, ha? So you mentioned na you are not honoring ito pong IRR na ginawa ng Transition Committee, and what you are honoring now as valid, as you said, is the one that you drafted and you signed without the signature of the committee. So, parang ngayon pa lang may problema tayo. Dalawa ang IRR nito. Ano ho? Sir, hindi ho ba itong pangyayaring ito is a bad start for the department?
I don't think it's a bad start because what we were doing was in accordance with law. If the other members prepared their own IRR, this IRR that they prepared was not the IRR of the transition committee. They did not have the authority to prepare their own implementing rules and regulations that were the result of meetings not convened by the chairman of this committee. Unfortunately, they convened two meetings without my presence, without my participation, and this meeting that they convened could not stand in any legal forum
Opo.
for its legality because they had done it without authority from the chairman of the committee.
Opo.
They had done the meeting without my participation, without my notice, without any participation at all of the chairman of the transition committee.
Sige po. Okay. So, attorney,
There is no problem as far as we are concerned, Ted, because we have an existing IRR that was enacted in accordance with the law.
Opo.
And for that matter, it was signed by me
Okay.
because that was done in meetings
Opo.
that we called.
Sige po. So, attorney, ganito ho, no? You mentioned now that you are holding office sa POEA diyan po sa Ortigas, EDSA. Wala pa pong staffing pattern ang inyong departamento at wala pang budget. Diyan kayo nag-o-office. Tama ho bang rinig ko? Kayo na po ay nag-take over sa POEA?
That is true because, under the law, Ted, as I said, in the initial operation of this department, we don't need any budget right now because there are existing budgets of these different agencies subsumed by this department. The budget of the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration is the budget that we are using right now.
Yes, sir.
Because that is the law.
Opo, but
Under paragraph M, section 8 of the law, it provides that I shall exercise the powers and the functions of the administrator of the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration. We don't need a budget.
Opo,
We have existing budget right now.
But the law says na may transition po muna. Hindi po naman ito as in ngayon as in you assume kaagad. Hindi ho ba, sir, with all due respect, you're drawing your salary now from the POEA budget?
That is true because that is within the purview of the law. That is in accordance with law. What I am thinking, I have to explain this thing because
Go ahead
this
po,
is a
go ahead,
very
Secretary.
complicated matter, and I want to do this very quickly. What they are saying is that this department is not fully operational because one thing, there is no budget for 2023. We don't have we don't have yet the staffing pattern. We don't have the people trained to occupy the position that will be created in the budget of 2023. We don't have problem with that because that is within the law. But you look at the provisions of the law also on the transition period. The transition period shall be done within a period of 2 years. We are now in the transition period. We are in the early operation of the law. And under the law, it provides that in the initial implementation of this law, the budget of all the agencies subsumed by this department or merged by this department shall be used in the implementation of this law. And that is what we did in the performance of my functions as the head of this department, occupying this building, where the old Philippine Overseas Employment Administration was housed at the time. But
Alright, sige po.
this Philippine Overseas Employment Administration does not exist anymore. It is abolished.
So where is Attorney Bernard Olalia now?
Bernard Olalia, we have this kind of arrangement with him. He knows the law. He respects the law. The people in this building knew the law. And the law is very clear that I have to perform the functions and responsibilities of the administrator of the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration. Olalia is here in the building. He is receiving his salary, but his only job right now is to be part of the transition committee. That is very clear in the law. So if you are, if you have the time, Ted, I am inviting you to be here in the building, to visit us in the building, so that I can bring you around in the building. Work goes on in the building. And I don't know why they are saying that we are not. We are not in operation. We are in operation. That
Sir,
is why
opo,
I exercise that power under the law to lift the ban, because that is for the interest and the welfare of our people.
sige
For
po.
all migrant workers.
Sige
We
po.
cannot
So,
deny them.
opo. So,
that
Sec,
opportunity.
anim ka ninyo na bureaus under DOLE ang tinake over nyo. Maliban sa POA, ano pa ho ito?
I cannot. I have not taken over the other agencies because they are not. The Department of Labor, Secretary Bilio, is not letting go with these two offices. The International Labor Affairs Bureau, the POLO offices, the Philippine Overseas Labor Offices,
Aha.
and also the Reintegration Center that is attached to the OWA, the National Maritime Institute. They are not housed in the building. If they are housed in this building, I could have taken over also the responsibilities of these offices, but unfortunately, the ILAB and the polo offices are in the office in the building of the Department of Labor. And the office of the Undersecretary for Migrant Affairs, headed by Undersecretary Ariola, is in the building of the Department of Foreign Affairs. And that of the Reintegration Center is in the building of the OWA, Office of Workers Welfare Agency.
Sir,
So
opo.
this is the situation right now.
Opo, sige
Right
po.
now, I am holding office here in the building, but I cannot fully exercise the powers and the functions of this office insofar as the other agencies are concerned, because even in the attendance of meetings,
Yes, sir.
the Department of Labor is not allowing their
Opo, opo.
members in the committee to
That is
attend.
that's the thing that we'd like to bring up this morning po, Secretary. Kasi, una, what's your beef against Secretary Bello, if you have any?
May I beg your pardon again?
What's your beef against Secretary Bello, if there's any? What's your quarrel with him?
I don't have actually a personal quarrel with Secretary Billy. It is just the interpretation of the law. As far as he is concerned, he said that the department does not exist.
Opo, opo.
You know, we are doing state aid service to our people.
Alright.
We cannot attend to
Sige
the
po.
problems
So
of
kung
the
wala
migrant
kayong
workers.
away ni Secretary Bello kaninyo, doon lang kayo nagkakatalo sa interpretasyon ng batas. Pero Sec, ngayon po kasi ang naguguluhan ang inyong mga unang-unang kliyente. Ano ang ating mga OFWs? Kagaya po nitong ngayon, sa dinami-dami ho ng aplikante po para sa abroad at naguguluhan sa mga anunsyo ninyo, doon sa deployment ban sa Saudi Arabia, ang sabi po ng Secretary Bebot kahapon, sandali lang, may utang sa atin yung mga yan ng ilang bilyong piso, hindi binabayaran ba't mo naman papapuntahin doon yung mga Pilipino? Ang dami nang pwedeng puntahan. And you're invoking national interest. Sabi niya, hindi ito national interest, baka personal interest. Go ahead, sir.
I have to explain this thing, Ted, because, you know, I was involved in the year 2016 in the filing of the labor complaints. You may be aware of my being the lead of the team that was sent to Saudi Arabia to solve the 11,000 stranded Philippine workers in Saudi. And these are the current problems that we have right now. We filed the labor complaints before the labor courts in Saudi Arabia during the time when I was sent by the president to solve this problem of these workers connected with companies that stopped operation. And these were the Bin Laden Construction Company and the Saudi Oil. We won in the labor court. But the question, Ted, is that these are responsibilities of private companies. Can we impose this responsibility to a foreign government? It is common sense. If we have a case here of private companies, can the Philippine government be forced to pay the legal obligations of private companies? That is the thing that we are trying to consider right now, because That is the principal reason in the suspension of the processing and verification of employment contracts of domestic workers. We cannot continue with that reason because, as
Sige
far
po.
as I am concerned, if I am given the opportunity to solve this problem, after the lifting of the ban, I am going to Saudi Arabia.
Sige po.
I cannot go right
Opo,
now
opo.
because I mean, it's Ramadan. So I was given this assurance that I can say the leaders in the kingdom, especially the crown prince of the kingdom of Saudi Arabia,
Opo.
to discuss this matter,
Sige po.
the issue on the payment of this claim, because we can ask the government of the kingdom of Saudi Arabia to help us by providing a portion of, if there are receivables of this construction company. Because these are big construction companies, and in all probability, they have receivables, unpaid claims that they had in the past. And second, they have also properties that can be sold. So proceeds of these properties can be used in the payment of the claims of our workers. But remember that there are, as I said, I think about 90,000 workers involved. Workers from India, from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, from Egypt, from the African continent. These are workers who have claims against these companies. But unfortunately, these companies declared bankruptcy. And their bankruptcy, I think, applications were approved by the court. So our remedy now is to get our claims from the receivables. So we have to work with this in a manner that will not destroy the diplomatic relations of
Sige
our
po.
country.
Opo. Unfortunately
That is
po.
why I lifted the ban so that we can proceed with the, procedure in a way that we can ask the payment of their claims without affecting the opportunity of our people insofar as recruitment of domestic
Yes, sir.
workers
Yes,
is
sir.
concerned.
Apo. Sige po. Salamat po. Sir, unfortunately, for lack of material time, we really have to end this interview now. But ito lang po, before ho si Chacha, baka may pahabol siya. Sir, have you talked to the President about this matter? Because, sir, talking to Secretary Bello yesterday, gave us the impression that there's really something wrong with the way the transition para sa operasyon ng inyong departamento is going. Apparently ho, dito hindi kayo nagkakasundo, and I think dapat dito mamagitan na mismo ang presidente para sabihin sino ba sa inyo tama.
This is a matter that will have to be decided by our people and by the migrant workers in this country to find out who is right and who is wrong.
I don't
As far
think,
as the issue of presenting this to the president,
sir, I don't
we
think
had discussed this with the president. The issue on this, and that is why, as I said, I cannot divulge publicly that discussion. It's up for Secretary Billiot to verify from Secretary Middlea what happened.
Opo, but
To get instruction from him, because there was discussion as far as this issue is
if you're going to give the kumbaga the decision whom to follow sa ating overseas contract workers, parang I don't think it's fair for these people na ma-involve nga po dito sino ba tama sa kanila, because they are just there waiting nga sa tulong ng gobyerno through your department. I don't think eleksyon ito na sino yung boboto nilang tama o mali o kanilang kursunado o hindi. Di ho pa somebody really have to step in and say na itigil nyo na itong away na ito at kayo'y magkasundo na sa isang kapakanan. I don't think ito ho'y dapat nating ipasa sa mga migrant workers, with all due respect. Hindi ho pa pwedeng ilantad ho ninyo kung kayo ba'y nakausap ng presidente. Ano ba sinabi? Kasi po naniniwala kami na ang tanging makapag-aayos ito ang Pangulo ng Pilipinas.
we are members of the cabinet, we have to use our discretion. Alam mo, Ted, walang naiwan na oras ngayon. We have only up to June 30. And this problem should not stay unsolved at this time, because the suspension of the recruitment of domestic workers in Saudi Arabia will have long-lasting effect on our labor relations with Saudi Arabia and the other countries in the Gulf states. Right now, they had signed an agreement with the Ministry of Labor of Thailand. They already had started recruiting more than 10,000 workers, domestic helpers from Thailand. Now, these are opportunities that we are losing. Before, thousands of documents were being processed for domestic workers just for Saudi Arabia alone. But because of this suspension, it had affected the remittances of our workers from the Middle East, especially from Saudi Arabia. So, with this very short period of time, one should use his discretion by making a decision that will protect the interests of our migrant workers. The Department of Migrant Workers is not created for us. My term is only until June 30. It's coterminous with the term of the President, even if I will be submitted for confirmation in the Commission appointments. So I'm appealing to everybody in this administration that we should help our migrant workers, especially those aspiring to be employed in Saudi Arabia at this time. Why are we going to continue the suspension of the recruitment of domestic workers when, as far as the region is concerned, we can handle that separately with the Saudi government?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Apo.
And
Well
if
said.
given the opportunity, I will go to Saudi Arabia to appeal to the leaders of the kingdom
Apo.
to provide a portion of that money that they can get from these big companies to be
Opo.
used in paying the claims of
Our
those who
Filipino
had
workers.
filed the
Opo,
claims
opo,
in
opo. Sige po.
2016. I
Alright.
was the one who started paying the filing of the labor complaints.
Opo.
I know the history of this claim
Thank you, sir. Sige po.
because
Apo.
I was there.
Opo. Secretary, thank you for airing your side in the program. And hindi ito yung huli nating ugnayan po sa isyong ito para po sa kapakanan ng ating mga migrant workers. Salamat po, Sec. Godspeed, sir. Thank
And
you.
I'm inviting you, Ted, anytime. You can visit me in my office here in Ortigas, in
Opo.
the 6-story building of the old Philippine
Yes, sir.
Overseas Employment
The Blas F.
Administration.
Opley Building.
And we can
Salamat po.
engage in further discussion
Opo. Opo.
about the plight of our migrant workers in this country.
Attorney, thank you very much po. Salamat na marami. Si Attorney Abdullah Mamao po ang Secretary Designate ng Department of Migrant Workers.
Ted Filon at DJ Chacha. Ngayon, nasa Radyo 5, 92.3 News FM. Monday to Friday, 6 to 10 a.m.